This next panel session will be on the role of financial institutions and CFOs in fostering sustainable finance. I would like to invite our panelists, Ms. Meral Murathan, Executive Vice President of TSKB, who will be joining us virtually. Mr. Nadjme Yusuf, Group Sustainability Accelerator Officer of Affin Bank Berhad, Mr. Sam Ong, CFO of Vena Energy, CFO Coalition Participant, and Mrs. Marika Stocker, Senior Manager of Sustainable Finance Solutions at Sustainalytics. And the moderator for this session, well, you've met her before, ladies and gentlemen, for her keynote speech earlier today. She's Ms. Cath Bozanich, moderator for this session. I shall pass the floor over to you, Ms. Cath Bozanich.
Good afternoon again, everyone, and thank you for joining us today, our panellists. So this is an interesting panel discussion and something that I'm quite well aware of. You know, Fortescue has gone for its green funding. We've had our various opinions from companies like Sustainalytics and S&P. So this panel will just consider the role of financial institutions and CFOs in fostering sustainable finance. So enabling transactions among issuers and investors is critical to ensuring the continued growth of the sustainable finance market. In this panel, we will hear from CFOs and representatives from banks and external assurers on their role in fostering a sustainable transition and ensuring the credibility of the market. So we'll have about a 40-minute discussion with the panel members, and then you can send your questions through as we're speaking, and we'll try and respond to as many questions as we can at the end. I will pass it on to each of the panellists so they can introduce themselves. They'll probably be able to give the best introduction. And also, at the end of their introduction, I'll ask them each to answer this question. So, does going green or sustainable make financial sense for businesses? Sam.
Thank you very much. I'm Sam Ong, CFO of Vena Energy. A member of the CFO Coalition. Welcome to the panel discussion. I think the questions have been answered many times in different ways. I look forward to participating in why it makes sense.
Hi, I'm Nadjme Yusuf. Just joined Affin Group 2 days ago. So here am I. Okay, thank you very much, and I'm so honored being one of the panel here, and the panelists that we have here is very prominent, and I'm glad that I'm being given an opportunity to be part of the panelists here. And before this, I was in Malaysia Development Bank, we call it here in Malaysia, Bank Pembangunan Malaysia, where I spent 5 years there. So that's where I will also share my experience as part of the questions with the audience here on the floor. Thank you very much.
Thanks. My name is Marika. I'm based in Singapore within Sustainalytics. I'm a senior manager there covering the ASEAN region for sustainable corporate solutions. That means that we do sustainable finance, but also other aspects of helping companies around supply chain impact and benchmarking. And before I joined Sustainalytics, I was working at the UNGC, so it's a pleasure to work again in regards to be a panelist here. And before that, historically, I have a banking background, so also looking forward to this discussion. And Cath, to your questions, yes, it definitely makes sense, and there's a clear bottom line. There's a clear link between the bottom line of a company and their ESG activities. Thanks.
And I'm not sure if Meryl's still there. Yep.
Yes, I am here. Congratulations for the panel and warm regards from Istanbul. My name is Meral. I'm representing today TSKB, the oldest development and investment bank in Turkey, established further to Second World War. today I believe it's going to be a very joyful and fruitful event. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we'll start with our first question with Nadjme. Can you share any specific examples how sustainability initiatives have had a positive financial impact on your company?
Okay, thank you very much. Interesting question. Normally, people would classify or quantify the initiative, the sustainability initiative, in part of installing solar panels, GBI-rated building and all that. But specifically in my previous experience, we have actually incorporated the climate risk assessment or climate risk analysis as part of our credit assessment. And we use a specific tools called GIS, which is a Geographical Information System. So these tools actually evidently track the ecological change and also the evidence of human impact, where specifically where we use it on our assessment for the hydro or mini hydro project, where we track and analyze, assess the land use, where actually it will have an impact to the upstream performance or the flow rate for the river. Sorry, apology for being a bit technical. But that's where we actually use the initiative, the tools, where the land use will have an impact to the performance of the hydro project, which actually will increase or decrease the repayment risk. So going back to the financial impact, by using these tools or this initiative, we could well protect our investment in that sense, so that we ensure that the repayment risk is kept at a certain level. And as you know, the impact of this so-called climate risk on the performance of hydro project, the project that we finance, is quite large if we don't use right tools in sense of sustainable initiative. And in sense, at the end of the day, by having these tools, it really improve our understanding and the performance of risk management, and also as part of the innovation for our financial institution. So with that, I hope I answered that question.
Thank you. So the next question I have for Meral. So, you know, as any of us are aware, sustainability and the standards and expectations are evolving very rapidly. It can be quite overwhelming if you work in this space. I'm speaking for myself there. But Meral, I'd just be interested in your opinion. How much of sustainability is driven by investors versus regulators or versus necessity?
Thank you very much, Cath, for the question. Actually, it's an integrated process, if I may call it that way. All the parties have been, in a sense, contributing to what is their way or vision. As a development and investment bank founded 72 years ago, it was sustainable practices by that contemporary meaning, of course, and up until now, has been always integrated in our discipline and principles. Just to indicate, for example, we have engineers with our bank since our establishment. But what we are seeing for the last couple of years, especially after the Paris alignment, investors have been very much more keen on engaging with the parties. For example, we have responsible banking practices, and prior to that, we had UN responsible investor practices. So all is going on in an integrated approach. And the rating agencies, now today we have Sustainalytics, we are seeing that Moody's, which are engaging themselves very much rapidly too. From our point of view, it is going to be very much expanded and integrated, whoever the initiation or origination comes from. Just a couple of information from TSKB side, from our practices in Turkey. We have actually established our sustainability management system. Initially, it was environmental management system. The latter one we established in 2004, and the sustainability management system we established in 2011. We are a bank working heavily with the development financial institutions. Now what we are connecting it with your question as well. Now we are seeing the huge influence of international finance initiatives and financial institutions as well. And in our practices, we have embedded an SDG mapping system. That mapping with our own voluntary approaches. None of the DFIs have actually asked us doing that, or neither of the regulators, but we've chose it that way. So, but I'm trying to say that's the voluntary process as well. But what we are seeking for is also the impact to be generated through regulators too. We are also seeking to see this. We are modeling our climate risk evaluation tools. We are modeling our SDG mapping systems, and we are collecting data and measuring and putting on the eyes of the investors and all stakeholders. So hoping that regulators will be going much more supportive without distorting the market conditions. Thank you.
Thanks. The next question goes to Sam. So Sam, you're a CFO. What functions of a CFO are pivotal to effectively integrating sustainability into corporate strategies, to investments and to finance?
Yeah, thank you. As a CFO and a finance function, we are the custodian of a massive amount of data and utilization of those data to hold our key management team members accountable and be responsible for what they are committed to. I believe as a CFO, we have a huge role to play. And the CFO cannot obviously be approaching this measurement and therefore the management of it with the data angle. I think there has to be a bit of a passion behind that initiatives with a sense of urgency and a sense of purpose for this dimension of the focus for the organization. I remember participating in a investment committee meeting where we are spending money on building an educational center for bird migration and providing a space outside and inside of our plant for environmentalists to continue to observe the migration patterns, and of course making sure that the birds flying through our solar plants will have the necessary food chains preserved for what they wanted to do. It creates a lot of soiling on our panels because of the eating and what comes after that. But it's part and parcel of how we wanted to understand, the birds to our plants, and that not only do we, I think, held ourselves accountable to making sure that the birds come back, and it's very difficult to control the birds coming back and stay. They must have liked what we have done to stay, and the environmentalists liked it. Not only that, but I think our plants has been promoted by the Taiwanese government in all the renewable energy programs that they are doing. And that we are using our track record and our credibility in protecting environment and measuring our progress, managing continuously. That earns us, I believe, a project that is 5 times larger than the one that we just built in terms of a new pipeline in the horizon. And so that kind of demonstrated not just holding ourselves responsible, a CFO being in the IC, a boardroom to dictate it, to measure it, to have third party verify it, but it makes sense from creating what makes sense for the birds. It makes sense for new pipelines that I was, I think, very happy to demonstrate the success of that traction. And with the track record like this in Taiwan, you don't even need a CFO to talk about extra investments. This education environment and coordinating with the government is being replicated everywhere. Whether we are doing a storage, whether we are doing solar, hybrids, onshore wind, or even offshore wind, which obviously takes a different level of environmental concerns.
Thank you. So ESG assessments are becoming more and more important, and there's more and more of them. But Marika, what do you see as the role for second-party opinion providers like Sustainalytics in regard to sustainable finance?
Yeah, thanks, Cath, for that question. I think there's different things an SPO provider can help in the market. I mean, why there are even SPO providers out there? This has historically come from because investors at one point, they were asking like themselves the questions, how do I know whether this green bond I'm investing in is really green? Who can assure me that it's not like a greenwashing project or that the company is just trying to marketing some stuff to me which is not actually there? And because of like investors normally tend to be the most critical parties in the market, demanding the highest standard in these things, SPO providers got established. So one main role of an SPO provider is to look at how credible is that transaction. Is it aligned with market standards? In the sustainable finance space, these market standards would be in the bond space. It would be ICMA, the International Capital Market Associations, where such a transaction would get aligned with. When it comes to loan, it's more like on LMA, the Loan Market Association, the green loan principles or sustainability-linked loan principles. And an SPO provider is basically looking, are the criteria from these market standard setting bodies, are they fulfilled? So it's transparency, it's credibility increasing, mostly for investors, but also for issuers and also for the banks who work on these transactions. Everybody, oh, that's a nice background. Everybody gets basically assurance that the transaction is credible. I would say another important aspect is also that such an SPO or Sustainalytics, for example, can help as guidance for companies. So if you don't know where to start, if you say like, what is really green, which green activities or project do I even have? You can always reach out to SPO providers and ask them and tell them like, these are the KPIs, the targets I have in mind, or I'm a steel company, where do I start? What can I use for a sustainable finance transaction? So they can also provide guidance to companies, but also to banks, because banks are the ones who are structuring these transactions. So we work closely with banks in the region, but also with the global banks as partners to all work together to basically bring the best projects to market, so to say, and to hopefully combat greenwashing in all these cases. And then last but not least, it also has this impact angle. When you get an SPO, normally your impact of these projects gets measured. And that becomes more and more critical. What we are seeing in Europe, impact reporting is already mandatory for bond transactions. And again, investors demanding that more and more. And with an SPO, you also get that impact part covered, basically. Thanks.
Thank you. And I think we can all agree that greenwashing's come up quite a few times today, and I think more and more it is something that general stakeholders are taking care of, and I'm glad greenwashing is being called out. So I think it creates more of an even playing field as well for those that are trying to achieve things. So thanks for that. Nadjme, do you think investors see the full benefit in sustainability?
Thank you for the question. In my previous experience, investor in our view is also our customer, our client that actually is part of our ecosystem, which is our borrower in this case. So when we talk about how do they actually see the benefit, we can see evidently via two ways. One is actually having conversation with them. We are quite hands-on and we are quite close in that sense in terms of relationship, where we do meet them on can say daily, weekly basis. So from that conversation, we know that they see the benefit of it and they really understand it. So I can say it is a journey. We started off with 30-40% of the customer knowing about sustainability. By end of 2-3 years down the road, we can see, I mean, the number grows to 70-80% of them understanding. They understand about the sustainability aspect and concept, and thus also understand the benefit. And the second part is evidently we can see by their actions. So we are quite hands-on when it comes to monitoring our customer, the performance of our customer, and also prior to that, which actually during the origination or loan approval stage, where we go and visit them. So we can see the practices that they have actually adopted in sense of sustainability, for instance, in construction, where they actually use the IBS system, which is the industrialized building system, where actually all the material on construction is being done in a controlled environment, where they actually minimize wastage. So we could see there's a trend, there's a lot of company, in fact, in Malaysia that actually using IBS, and IBS is being known as one of the sustainable construction practices. So that shows that they see the benefit in sense of by actually adopting this kind of practices, they actually can save a lot, and at the bottom line, that's also the profit that they can actually realize. And another thing that I could see when I go and really visit these projects, where we are actually doing it on monthly basis, as part of also our annual credit review and so on and so forth, we could see that how they look after their employee or their workers, general workers, where they spend more in terms of the workers' welfare. So it's also part of sustainability, where they again spend quite a lot of money in these workers' quarters and benefits, incentives. So this in return actually is part of sustainability, and it increases the productivity and efficiency of their work. So again, by having seen these two evident, I can see that they see the benefit and they are really actually executing it or implementing it in their daily life and routine, and they are part of their company practices. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. So we've already spoken about it today, that climate change is a big focus, and I think it's the same in financial, sustainable financing as well. But we have got social-related investments. So Meral, I'd love to hear your opinion on this. So how do social-related investments contribute to the transformation of the business? And which do you think are the most important objectives in the social sphere for an entity like yours?
Thank you very much for the question. Before answering these, actually, I would like to connect with Nadjme and Katya, actually, for their comments, especially for green bonds and taking SPOs. We've issued the very first green bond out of CMEA region in 2016, and we've been working with Sustainalytics since then, and we're creating our allocation and impact reports. So I just wanted to note this, and we made our third issuance at the beginning of last year as well, and we will be a continuous player in the field. And connecting with Nadjme also as a development bank practicer, we are doing the very same practices. I think this is also showing the transitory and transformative power of mission banks. We are always on the field before the origination, loan allocation, monitoring processes for the all environmental and social best practices to follow. And to connect now, finally, thank you for your patience with the valuable question. The social part and social impact is, yes, accelerating at a very good pace, which makes us happier. And for example, today, this year actually, we've onboarded, now we are employed, have an employee who is a sociologist, and trying to well address the social impact through the projects that we finance. It is either working capital loans or investment loans. So it's very important from our point of view. And in the multilateral development banks or regional development banks, practices and frameworks, we are also seeing in this is addressed in a much more accelerated way. So it is important, and we will continue with it. When we consider the second part of the question, what relates with the social part or social impact, which has not been pretty much prioritized so far, unfortunately, although it is one or three of the correlated with the 1 or 3 of the UN SDGs already. For example, inclusiveness investments. In Turkey, we've been supporting for the last 5 to 7 years gender empowerment, women empowerment, actually, women empowerment. And in each and every project, we are seeking for, as an example, also, if it's not a women empowerment loan, as to whether there is gender equity or not practices. Also, we are working heavily now on the youth unemployment, youth inclusiveness as well. It's a unfortunately large problem nowadays in Turkey. So we are working to mitigate it too, and we've created a toolkit for this, apart from creating employment through all other parties' effectiveness. So I believe, we believe the social impact generation and establishing good practices either through direct financing and encouraging those vulnerable parts of the society, or through each and every project that we finance to support the existing environment of those projects, creating citizen engagement programs. These are important ones and all relating with the inclusiveness, I guess. Thank you.
Thanks, Meral. Sam, another question for you. So, what's the role of the CFO in setting company-wide SDG-linked KPIs and targets that reflect and provide the credibility to a company's sustainability strategies?
I see myself as a CFO, and I also see myself as a very senior executive of the company, peer to the CEO. And regional country heads. So that is a positioning that I think our finance executives should have when you're invited to the investment committee and the boardroom. And when I talk about the diversity, or the company talk about diversity that I supported not just from a CFO angle, I supported from an executive management angle, representing the best interests of the shareholders. And I lead my finance leadership team according to that goals, that KPIs. I don't have the equal position, but I have elevated some to be sitting in the finance leadership team in participating of finance best practices and system-driven process excellence that I've created. And that movement actually prompted a lot of senior executives, including the CEO, in adopting the same practices in achieving a diversity and a diversity of thoughts and gender diversity that we are talking about in the company. One of my fellow panelists mentioned about best practices. I think it's important that finance see ourselves in that the whole accounting, FP&A, treasury, investment, for example, to look at that as the fact that we are not alone. What we are suggesting to the investment committee and the boardroom is not alone. And then that's why I think the UNGC CFO Coalition provides a platform for shared best practices and support to what you are able to bring to the decision-making table and in influencing a certain direction. And to the banks, to the bondholders, to the equity shareholders, CFO is a very credible position of how the sources of funding are done and how the funding utilization is being materialized on site, on the ground. So if we are the conduit and the steward and the custodian of not just data, but also the use and allocation of funds, we are in a good position to influence decision-making and to install KPIs for the company to respect and to implement accordingly.
Thanks, Sam. Some really interesting comments there, and I agree with you that the CFO role is so critical. It is that executive leadership role right next to the CEO, so they are critical. Marika, as well, I've got another question for you. So linked again to KPIs, how are you assessing and evaluating KPIs used in sustainability-linked instruments?
Thanks. Before I answer that question, I just wanted to echo what Meral said. I don't know, Meral, if you can see us, but thanks a lot for making that comment about social. So basically, what we often forget is like everybody is obsessed with carbon at the moment, but it is because it is kind of like where we got the most gist of it yet. But being totally frank, like the social, the biodiversity, the nature part, all these things, they will just come more and more. And this is like a clear trend we are seeing at the moment in the market. And every market player cannot forget that these things will become more and more. They are already very relevant, but we just haven't figured out fully yet how to tackle them. But do kind of like also pay attention to these topics because they are also very, very important, sometimes even more important than the carbon aspect. One project, for example, we worked recently on in Malaysia, which I want to highlight, is with Westports. They reached out to us for an impact measurement on the socioeconomic and social side on what they are doing. So that was a really, really great project, which is very relevant for the region here. Good, so now to the KPI question, a very tricky one, but I will try to kind of like break it down into easy bite-sized pieces so that everybody can follow what we basically try in that assessment, because there are different components to it. And the first component is that we again look at what is the market standard for sustainability-linked bonds and sustainability-linked loans and what is asked there. And then we would check how well is the transaction meeting these standards. And for the two major components is how do you structure your KPIs and how do you structure your targets. So let's look at the KPIs. For a KPI, we have a rating system where we tell basically in the SBO, you have a very strong KPI, you have a strong one, you have an adequate one, or your KPI is not aligned. And with not aligned would mean to the market standards, basically. So let me give you an example with one recent transaction we worked on. It was our neighboring country in Indonesia, PT Semen Cement, short from SIG or SIG. They launched very recently a sustainability linked loan out of the cement sector. And they had KPI on carbon. So what we were checking on that transaction was, the first thing is that we check materiality. So what does this mean? Materiality means, is that KPI even relevant to your business model? So in the case of SIG Cement, they had a carbon reduction KPI. So yes, very relevant, high emitting sector. So that box was ticked. Then the second thing we check is applicability. Applicability normally speaks to how much is covered from your overall business model and from your overall corporation in regards to that KPI. So let's say a company would come and would say, oh, this little small subsidiary, this is the one we want to have for that KPI, but it only accounts to 5% of all our GHG emission. then we will probably tell them, sorry, my friend, applicability is not met, because you want to cover a large amount of your GHG emission if this is your KPI. In the case of SIG, for example, they were focusing on Scope 1, and Scope 1 was around 70% of their emissions, so applicability met, that was fine. And then normally other things we check around the KPIs is on which methodology do you use? Is it something external? Do you align that methodology calculation, for example, with the GHG protocol if it's around carbon? Is it clear? Is it transparent? How do you calculate it? Is this a black box? Can we understand how do you measure that KPI? All these things, they basically flow into our assessment. For SIG, for example, they used an external sustainability standard specific for the cement sector, but it was an international recognized one, so they also ticked the boxes on that. And as you might guess already, their KPI turned out as very strong because they did a really good job on that end. And then the second part, which I would like to highlight, is the targets, because they are as important as the KPIs. It's like they come as a pair, and you can't get rid of one of them. So when it comes to the targets, the main big question is: are your targets, your sustainability targets, are they ambitious? And how do you know what is ambitious? Which number do you put that you know? Am I not overreaching, or am I like underselling myself now with that target? So what Sustainalytics is doing, we check 3 things when it comes to a target. The first thing is the target stronger than your historical performance? Because that's the minimum, right? You don't want to put a weaker target than what you have achieved already in the past. So if that is ticked, then the second part which we would check is, what are your peers doing? Are other companies performing better than you with that target, or are they weaker? For example, for SIG, we looked at global cement companies, we looked at local ones, and turned out with their targets, they outperformed local peers, but they were kind of like slightly weaker or same performance with global large cement companies. And then the third one is, what we checked was, is your target science-based aligned? So what does this mean? It talks about, in regards to carbon, for example, is your target achieving the desperately needed 1.5 degree scenario from the Paris Agreement? Or is it even at least aligned with 2 degrees scenario? So this is what this science-based trajectory means. If you kind of like are way away from that, then your third box is basically not ticked. And what SIG did was they had a normal target and a stretch target, and the stretched one was science-based aligned, which was great. So that one was ambitious, and the other target got the rating of moderately ambitious, so to say. So that's basically very quick, in a nutshell, how you can assess the KPIs and the targets. And these are the main criteria where you need to start thinking at the start about it, because that determines later on whether that transaction meets market standards or not. Thanks.
Okay, thanks to the panel. That was an interesting discussion. We've got time, probably about 5 minutes before we have to wrap up for a couple of questions that have come through. So thanks everyone who's been sending through the questions. Nadjme, there is a question here about financing that's available in Malaysia. So is there any data to be shared on how big corporations in Malaysia are taking up sustainable financing?
Okay. I think there's most of the banks here in Malaysia, be it a commercial bank, be it the DFI, which is Development Financial Institution, are now really into this sustainable finance. Again, be it raising capital via sustainable sukuk, green bonds and all that, right until right into the products that they offer. In terms of, for instance, in Malaysia Development Bank, we have this Sustainable Development Fund, which is actually coming from our government, from Ministry of Finance, MOF. So this shows that it's already out there, and I mean, the commercial bank with likes of CIMB, Maybank, we can see there's a lot of product offering, funds and all that in sense of green financing and sustainable financing. Again, I can see that it's really growing in a very healthy numbers in the last 3 to 4 years. And in fact, my position in Affin also is a testament that banks are really looking into sustainable financing, where I'm now is the group head sustainability officer. So I mean, you look at the organization of all these organization chart of all these banks, where they take matters seriously and they are actually pushing the sustainability agenda really to their forefront of their strategy. To be honest, I can't think of even one bank that are not into this sustainability financing in Malaysia. So that's always there. And I think the product offering will just get more innovative, be more attractive. And that's also the part of the incentivization, where we give incentive where the company comply in sense of sustainability effort and initiative that they do. They are being offered special rates and all that. So we can see that is also the trend, where it differentiates the normal fund, a normal conservative fund, compared to the sustainable linked financing. So thank you.
Thanks for that question, the response, sorry. Sam, the question here for you. So have you seen any difference in the approach to sustainable finance from investors and intermediaries in different markets for which your company is active?
Yeah, I see that even without the more money is chasing the viable projects. That was true 5 years ago. And I would say that more green money is chasing green projects. There's not enough green projects. The debt and equity financing market are looking for stakeholders in the ecosystem, like Sustainalytics, like the World Bank and UNGC's organizations, to provide not just the goals and KPIs, but also strict enforcement of these performance indicators, so that there is a cross-check and balances from the debt funding to the funding utilization. And that's why I think CFO and senior executives in the company play an important conduit role to combine the two. Marika's look is very deceiving. Vena Energies is Sustainalytics rated, and we have to go through a lot of stuff to convince Marika's organization that we are rated 9.5, and they will always come back and making sure that we are still 9.5 and not 11.2. So I think this is necessary. This is necessary cross-check and balances that we need in a whole ecosystem. The bond rating agencies are coming up with indices and for comparability of different companies, which is their role, not just on creditworthiness, but also on sustainability, trustworthiness. All those are going to be come into play, and they're going to be more and more stringent. As I mentioned before during my keynote slot, we placed ISO to ESG, and because you need the ISO to do business, to do more business, and you need ESG compliance for process excellence, so that you can be assured of the output of that process excellence to satisfy your stakeholders to get more business.
Thank you. So just to wind up our discussion today, I'd just like to ask each of the panellists to just give us some parting comments or something that you want everyone from in the room or anyone online to go away and take with them.
Thanks. Yeah, so I think it's, in regards to sustainable finance, it always sounds like maybe hard at the beginning if you're an inaugural issue or if you have never experienced it. But there's so much supporting bodies out there, like your bankers, other peer transactions you can look at, SBO providers like us you can reach out to, NGOs like the UNGC. They all try to basically help corporates accelerate in this sustainable finance space. So do speak to all of them. If you're keen to do something. And I mean, in general, like I really like the intro sentence, which I have read on one of the event things, where it says, we need to go from process-led to output-based impact measurements, and we also need to move from transactional focus to this holistic corporate approach. And I think this is very true, and we are seeing that the market is already moving in this direction. Precisely also where ESG ratings are becoming more important, like what Sam did, but Vena did a really good job on the process, by the way. So yeah, there is a lot going on, but do embrace that journey because we all have to go down that path. Thanks.
Okay, just want to add few stuff on as the closing remark. I see sustainability as the balancing act we have done in the last 1,000 years or so, quite a lot of harm to the planet and so on. So this is our time, this is our responsibility to do this balancing act in sense of activities in sense of sustainability related. For instance, in my team is on the financing part. And then just to touch what Marika just mentioned about holistic corporate approach. Holistic means that it does just not rely or depends on CFO alone or group sustainability officer. Sustainability is actually owned by the whole organization, owned by each and every departments or function that we have, including human resources. I mean, in fact, the way the policy of hiring policy, how you balance the gender equality, selecting people. For instance, in Malaysia, we have the B40 to include them as part of the workforce on the social part. And everybody has to actually shoulder this responsibility. It's not just on the sustainability officer, but it goes across the board, and also from the chairman, from CEO, they have to actually sing the same tune in terms of sustainability. So in this sense, then sustainability can work. It's a cultural mindset change, and it's a journey, but we need to act quick on it, or else, I mean, there will be a detrimental impact on the planet and in fact on the humanity. So that's how I end my session today.
Yeah, when the executives are all singing the same song, I think the CFO can do a little bit of a higher octave just to make sure that we inject a sense of purpose and urgency. I think that's sorely needed. Look, the way I look at this is that not for this forum, I do this in my regular meetings and high-level meetings. In life, sometimes there's no plan B. I feel that way just because I want to make some decision that I need to commit to it. In life, there's no plan B, sometimes. Planet Earth has no plan B. And we need to make sure that this is at the top of our agenda when we wake up in the morning. That gives us that energy, that X factor, that personality, that energy when we go to work to do our CFO role well as a custodian and a conduit for the use of funds and the sources of funds. The balancing act, yes, as we are doing the balancing act, and the organizations are always trying to do well. I think we need to make sure that to convince people and lead by example that we need to do good. And that higher octave, remember this higher octave when you're singing, that you have to be able to, as a leader, whether you're in finance or in operations or not, to really focus on, if it is a goal, we have to put our sometimes money where our mouth is. I shocked my CEO when I said that if I see one more long-term lost time injury anywhere, whether it's our contractors or in our construction site with our own people, we should tell the whole company, one more LTI, lost time injury, no bonus for 2022. And I'm happy to lead by example by setting that goal and implementation and enforcement. So, of course, I was asked to someone pull me aside and said, okay, take it easy. But I think that is a sense of urgency and seriousness, because in life there is sometimes no plan B, and it is a decision. It is a decision of how you want to move ahead with that type of a commitment in good times and bad. And I feel that while we are doing well, we should be asking the company to do good. And with that, hopefully with a sense of urgency and a sense of purpose. Thank you very much.
And Meral, some comments from you.
Thank you, Cathy, for asking, and thanks everyone for their comments. I would like to just address last 2 weeks were actually the comment for the COP, comments were all around for the COP27. I wasn't able to listen to the whole panels prior to this event. Apologies if I'm just referring to something that I already mentioned. But the last weekend's, signing and disclosures, final disclosures of COP27 was not that optimistic for all of us. I do personally agree with my colleagues and friends, panelists, what they've been telling. But we have to be optimistic and we have to continue. During the times, even the countries were not in a very good position to exchange among themselves or to address the climate, social perspectives of what we are living through. Perhaps the address will be the institutions. And under the institutions, I guess the banks have the superpower to transfer the industries, the companies, and banks should be supported by all the stakeholders, varying from investors, rating agencies, regulators. So we have to continue with the communication, otherwise we do not have any plan B. I do absolutely agree. Thank you for this panel.
Okay, thank you very much for my panellists. What a great discussion. And I hope there's some real messages there for everyone to take away. There definitely are some for me. So thank you again.
Well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. A round of applause for Ms. Cath Bozanich, moderator for the second panel session. And I thank you to our panelists, Ms. Meral Murathan, of course, Mr. Nadjme Yusuf, and Mr. Sam Ong, and Mrs. Marika Stocker. Thank you so much. Thank you.